The forest was silent, too silent. Tall trees with black leaves blocked the sky. No wind, no birds, no sound, only the soft crunch of dry leaves under Jack's boots. He wasn't supposed to be there. The old map said this forest was dangerous. Locals called it the Hollow Woods. But Jack had heard something like crying. He stopped. There it was again, a soft, weak sound, like a child. Crying? Jack looked around. The sound was coming from deeper inside. His instincts said turn back, but something in his heart said otherwise. He moved forward, careful with each step. The forest seemed to grow darker, colder. Branches reached down like claws. The crying grew louder, not human, not normal, but sad, desperate. Then he saw it, half buried under vines and broken branches. Was a cage. It was made of old metal, rusted and bent, hidden so well it almost disappeared into the ground. The cage was small, only big enough for a child. Jack moved closer, heart pounding. Inside the cage sat a little girl. Not human. She had light blue skin and strange glowing eyes. Her silver hair was dirty and tangled, and her clothes were torn. She hugged her knees, rocking slowly. She looked no older than 6. She didn't speak. She didn't cry anymore. She just stared at him. Jack knelt down. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." The girl didn't respond. Her eyes were wide, scared, empty. Jack reached for the cage door. Locked. But the lock was weak. He pulled a small tool from his belt and started working. His hands shook, not from fear but anger. Who would lock a child in here? Why? As he worked on the lock, he looked around. The trees were covered in deep claw marks, big ones. Suddenly the crying made sense. It wasn't just sadness. It was bait. The girl wasn't put here to be forgotten. She was left here to attract something or someone. The lock snapped open. Jack gently opened the door. The girl didn't move. She stared at him, then at the open door, unsure. He held out his hand. "Come, it's not safe here." Slowly, very slowly, she crawled out. Her tiny feet touched the ground and she almost fell. Jack caught her. She was freezing. He wrapped his jacket around her. "What's your name?" No answer. Then a whisper, soft, broken. "Mama." Jack's heart sank. She was looking for her mother. Suddenly a low growl came from the trees. Jack froze. The girl grabbed his arm, eyes wide in fear. Branches cracked. Heavy footsteps. Something big was nearby. Jack scooped her into his arms and ran. Behind him something howled. The girl buried her face in his chest. He didn't stop running. His legs burned. His lungs screamed, but he didn't stop. Finally, he found a small rock cave hidden behind a bush. He ducked inside, holding the girl close. They sat in the dark, breathing hard. Outside, the growling continued, but it faded. The creature, whatever it was, had lost their trail. For now. The girl was still shivering. Jack took out a small light and clicked it on. "Let's see those hands," he said gently. Her fingers were bruised, small claws broken. She had been in that cage for days, maybe longer. Jack gave her water. She drank fast, almost choking. He gave her a protein bar. She stared at it like it was treasure. He smiled. "Easy. You're safe now." But she didn't smile back. She looked toward the forest, then back at Jack. "Mama," she whispered again, this time with a tear. Jack's jaw tightened. Whoever left her here didn't care if she lived or died. And now monsters were hunting. This forest wasn't just cursed. It was a trap. And she was the bait. But why? Jack didn't know. Not yet. But he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't leave her. Whatever monsters lived out there, they'd have to go through him now. Morning light could not reach the forest floor. Jack carried the little alien girl in his arms, stepping carefully over twisted roots and thick vines. The small cave they had slept in was no longer safe. The girl was weak and something was still hunting them. She hadn't said a word since last night except one. Mama. Again and again, like a quiet song that only she remembered. Jack's eyes scanned the forest. The trees around them were strange, twisted and wide like they had grown too fast. But what caught his attention were the claw marks. Deep scratches. Long. And wide, far too big for any wild animal. One tree had marks as tall as Jack himself. The bark was torn and something black and sticky dripped from the wounds. Blood? Sap? He couldn't tell. He whispered to the girl, "We need to keep moving." She nodded slowly. Her tiny fingers gripped his jacket. She trusted him, but she still looked over her shoulder every few seconds, afraid. Jack moved quietly, listening to every sound. Snap. He stopped. That wasn't his foot. Another snap. Closer this time. He ducked low, hiding behind a thick tree. He laid the girl down gently and pointed to the roots. "Hide here, don't move." She obeyed instantly, curling into a ball. Jack pulled out a small plasma cutter, a weak weapon but better than nothing. He peeked around the tree. Nothing. Then he saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them. Blinking in the dark, just beyond the trees. Low, to the ground. No sound. No breathing. Just watching. Jack stepped back slowly. But then the girl made a soft noise. Barely a squeak. One of the creatures moved. It crept forward, silent and smooth. It had too many legs and no face, only a gaping mouth lined with sharp teeth. Jack fired. A flash of blue light hit the monster, sending it crashing into a bush. The other eyes disappeared at once, vanishing like smoke. Silence again. He picked the girl up. "We need to run. Now." They ran through the forest, deeper than before, jumping over logs and ducking under hanging roots. The forest seemed alive. Branches. Swaying without wind, shadows shifting as if watching. The girl pointed ahead. A clearing. They stumbled into the sunlight, blinding after so much darkness. Jack dropped to his knees, breathing hard. The girl was still in his arms, but her eyes were closed. "No," Jack whispered. "Stay with me. You're okay." She opened her eyes slowly, then looked toward the edge of the trees. "Not safe here," she said in a whispery voice. Jack looked up. She was right. The trees around the clearing were all marked, ripped and shredded. Bones were scattered around, mostly small, not human, but not beast either. "Someone lives here," Jack said softly. Or something did. He saw something metal sticking out from under a bush. He pulled it free. It was a broken drone, human-made. He wiped the lens and turned it on. The screen flickered. A short recording played. A man's voice. "We found the child. Subject 7. She must not escape. If the mother returns, we trap them both. Orders from Sector 12. No rescue, no mercy." The message ended. Jack froze. This wasn't an accident. She was placed here, hunted, watched. They weren't just monsters in the forest. Humans were part of this too. The girl stared at the drone, confused. Jack crouched and looked her in the eyes. "Do you remember anything? Who did this to you?" She looked at him, silent, then touched her chest. A small locket hung around her neck. Jack opened it. Inside was a tiny photo. An alien woman, older, strong, with similar glowing eyes. And a human man beside her. "Mama, Papa," the girl whispered. Jack's breath caught in his throat. A human and an alien? Together? Before he could think more, a loud screech echoed from behind. The trees trembled. The ground shook. They were back. Jack grabbed her hand. "Run!" They sprinted into the trees again, deeper than ever. But this time, Jack didn't just feel fear. He felt anger. Who would hunt a child like this? Who would use her as bait? And where was her mother now? He would find the truth, and he would protect her with everything he had. The sun disappeared fast. A cold mist rolled over the forest floor like a blanket of ghosts. Jack pulled the girl closer as they moved through the thick fog, every step careful and quiet. The trees around them faded into shadows. Even their own feet were hard to see. The girl gripped Jack's hand tightly. Her glowing eyes looked around, full of fear. "Don't worry," Jack whispered. "I'm not letting go." But deep down, he wasn't sure where they were going anymore. Everything looked the same. Suddenly the girl stopped. She pointed toward the trees. At first, Jack saw nothing. Then, shapes. Tall, thin shapes moving through the fog. Quiet. Slow. Wrong. Their arms were too long, their heads tilted in strange angles, and their skin looked like pale stone, cracked and dry. Jack pulled the girl behind him. "Stay close." One of the creatures stepped into the open. It didn't walk, it glided. Its feet didn't touch the ground. Its face had no eyes, no nose, only a wide mouth, full of sharp, broken teeth. It tilted its head toward them. The girl gasped and covered her mouth. The creature turned fully and started moving toward them. Then the others followed. 3, 5, 8 of them, all silent, all staring. Jack raised his small plasma cutter again. He didn't have many charges left. He couldn't fight them all. "Run," he said. But the girl didn't move. She took a step forward and raised her tiny hands. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Suddenly, the fog around her shimmered like the air itself bent and the monsters froze. They stopped mid-step. Every one of them stood still, their heads tilting in unison toward the girl. Jack stared in shock. "What did you do?" The girl looked at him confused. I don't know." The creatures began to back away slowly, returning into the mist, vanishing one by one. Soon the forest was silent again. Jack dropped to his knees, still holding the plasma cutter, confused and shaking. He looked at the girl. "What? Are you?" She didn't answer. She just sat beside him, tears on her cheeks. Jack realized she didn't know either. They rested for a moment under a large fallen tree. Jack pulled out a small data pad and checked. The map, no signal, still too deep in the woods. "We need shelter," he muttered. Then the girl spoke, soft but clear. "This place remembers pain." Jack looked at her. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the ground. Jack moved a few leaves and saw carvings in the dirt. Symbols. Names. Dozens of them. He brushed off more. Dirt, there were bones buried underneath, small bones. Children. Jack's stomach turned. This wasn't a natural forest, it was a graveyard. "Did they do this?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly. "The monsters. And the humans." Jack felt cold. Why would anyone do this to kids? She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Because we heal." "What?" She touched his hand. A small cut on Jack's finger began to close. He pulled back in shock. "You're a healer," he said, amazed. She shook her head. "Not me. My kind. We were made to fix." Jack remembered the broken drone. The message. "She's the cure." Now it made sense. The children weren't just targets. They were valuable. Too valuable. Humans wanted them. Monsters protected. Or hunted them. And someone had tried to erase them all. Suddenly a sharp cry echoed from the trees. Not a monster. A voice. Female. Broken. Weak. The girl stood up fast. "Mama?" Jack grabbed his bag. "Let's go." They ran through the trees, following the voice. Branches scratched their arms, roots tried to trip them, but they didn't stop. They reached a cliff edge. Below, deep in a rocky valley, was an old alien hut, half collapsed. Smoke came from inside. Jack looked down, heart racing. "Is that her?" The girl stared, eyes full of hope. "Mama." Rain began to fall. Cold drops slid down Jack's face as he and the little alien girl stood at the edge of the cliff, staring down at the broken hut below. Smoke rose weakly from the roof. The girl's tiny hand clutched Jack's arm. "Mama," she whispered again, eyes filled with hope. Jack wasn't so sure. Everything about this place felt wrong. The valley below was too quiet. No birds, no wind. Just the soft sound of rain tapping. The leaves and rocks. "Wait here," Jack said, kneeling beside her. "Let me go first." But the girl shook her head. "No, I go." She pulled away and started down the slippery path before he could stop her. "Wait. Careful." He followed, close behind. The mud made the path dangerous. Twice the girl slipped, and Jack had to catch her. But she didn't stop. The closer they got, the stronger the smell. Something burned, something metallic, and the smoke wasn't from fire. It was from a machine. They reached the hut. The walls were made from old metal scraps and broken wood. The door was half open. The girl pushed it slowly. "Hello?" she called. There was no answer. Jack stepped inside with her, keeping his hand near his weapon. The inside was dark and damp. Small alien symbols were drawn on the walls with red ink. Or maybe it wasn't ink. In the corner, a figure sat covered in a dark blanket. Jack's heart pounded. Was it a person? The girl ran forward. "Mama!" Jack reached to stop her, but the blanket moved. A hand rose slowly from underneath. Thin, pale, shaking. Then a voice, dry and low. "Vera?" The girl stopped, eyes wide. "Is it really you?" the voice asked. The blanket fell away. It was a woman. Alien, like the girl. Same glowing eyes, but older. Her face was tired, bruised, and full of pain. Her body looked half-starved, her arms, full of cuts and burns. She stared at the child, then tears filled her eyes. "My baby." The girl, Vera, ran into her arms. The mother fell back, sobbing and holding her tightly. Jack stood still. He didn't want to interrupt. Then the woman looked up at him. "You brought her here?" Jack nodded. "I found her in a cage, in the hollow woods." The mother trembled. "They left her, as bait. I knew it. I was too weak to stop them." Jack stepped closer. "Who are they?" She wiped her tears, her voice low. "Hunters. Some human. Some not. They're after the children. My people were healers, created long ago to fix broken cells, broken DNA. We were peaceful. But then they found out. Our blood can cure." "Cure what?" Jack asked. "Anything," she said. "Sickness, wounds, even death." Jack's eyes widened. The girl, this tiny child, wasn't just special. She was a miracle. "And your people?" Jack asked. "Gone," the mother whispered. "Taken, sold, experimented on." She looked at her daughter. "I was supposed to hide her, but they found us. I escaped, but they used her to draw me out." Jack clenched his fists. "How long have you been here?" "Days, maybe weeks. I can't move much. They injected something into my legs." Jack stepped forward. "Then we'll get you out." But before she could answer, a loud click came from the doorway. Jack spun around. A tall shadow stood in the rain. It wore a black suit, face hidden behind a silver mask. In one hand, it held a scanner. In the other, a weapon. "No sudden moves," the voice said. It was human. The girl screamed and hid behind her mother. Jack stood between them and the man. "I'm taking the asset," the masked man said. "Both of them." Jack didn't move. "They're not assets. They're people." The man raised the weapon. "You don't understand what she is. That child's blood is worth more than a planet." Jack's heart raced. The mother whispered to him, "There's a trap door under the back panel. You must run." Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed the girl. The mother, with her last strength, pressed a button on the wall. The floor behind them opened. Jack dropped through with the girl just as a shot fired. They rolled down a metal tunnel into the dark. The girl sobbed, calling for her mother. Jack held her close, whispering, "I promise. We'll come back for her." But deep in his chest, he feared they might already be too late. The tunnel was long, dark, and cold. Jack held Vera close as they slid down the metal slope. The only light came from the glow of her tiny hands. She was crying, calling out for her mother again and again. "We'll go back for her," Jack whispered, breathless. "I swear it." They landed hard at the bottom. Jack groaned and stood up slowly. His back hurt and his legs were scraped, but he was alive. Vera was trembling, but unharmed. The tunnel had brought them to an old underground chamber. It looked ancient, metal walls mixed with stone, roots creeping in from the ceiling. The smell of damp earth and rust filled the air. Jack turned on his flashlight, then he froze. The floor wasn't empty. Bones. Hundreds of bones. Small bones. He knelt down. These weren't animals. These were children. Aliens like Vera. Some were still, wearing scraps of cloth. Some had tags on their arms. Many were huddled together like they had died trying to protect each other. Vera stared, wide-eyed, her glowing eyes dimming. "Why are they here?" she asked in a broken voice. Jack had no answer, but deep inside he knew. They had all been assets, just like her, brought down here, forgotten or studied. He found a piece of broken metal half buried near the wall. On it, someone had scratched, words in rough, shaky handwriting. "They took us one by one. The healers died first. They feared the cure." Jack clenched his fists. Rage burned in his chest. They feared the cure. He looked at Vera. "They were scared of your kind, scared of your power. That's why they did this." She knelt beside a small skull, brushing dirt from it gently. Then she whispered, "They wanted to erase us." "No," Jack said firmly. "Not anymore." They explored the chamber. There were doors along the walls, some sealed shut, others half open. In one room, Jack found a control panel covered in dust. He wiped it clean and pressed a few buttons. A weak screen lit up. Logs appeared. Old files. Some corrupted, but one worked. A video. Jack tapped play. A recording showed a human scientist standing in front of a lab cage. Inside the cage was an alien, girl who looked just like Vera. Same glowing eyes, same silver hair. "She can regrow skin in seconds," the scientist said. "Even deadly viruses are broken down in her blood within minutes. Incredible. Dangerous. We must keep this contained. If the public finds out..." The video cut off. Jack stared at the screen in horror. They had used these children in secret. No records. No laws, just shadows. He looked back at Vera. "You're not a mistake," he said softly. "You're a miracle, and I won't let them take you." Vera walked toward the far end of the chamber. A soft light glowed from the wall there. A name was carved into the stone. She touched it. "Lenari," she whispered. "That's Mama's name." Jack moved beside her. "Your mother was here?" She nodded. This was her room. When she was small. Suddenly, Jack's flashlight flickered. Then it went out. The air grew cold. A sound echoed through the chamber, metal scraping against stone. Jack turned, pulling out his plasma cutter. From the shadows, a new shape appeared. It wasn't like the forest monsters. This one was taller, armored, built like a machine. Its eyes glowed red. It stepped forward with a heavy thud, then another. It was blocking the exit. Jack grabbed Vera's hand. "Run!" But the floor behind them began to shift. Traps, blades snapped from the walls, nets dropped from the ceiling. The whole place was rigged. Vera pulled him toward a broken wall on the side. "There's another way," she cried. "Follow me!" They crawled through the gap just as the machine charged. The tunnel on the other side was narrow and filled with roots. They ran, branches scratching their arms, thorns tearing at Jack's clothes. Behind them, the machine roared and slammed against the wall, too big to follow. They didn't stop until the tunnel opened into fresh air. They collapsed on the forest floor, gasping. Rain was still falling, but the sky above was clearer now. Vera looked back at the tunnel, tears in her eyes. She was there. Mama was really there once, Jack nodded. And now, she's alive, waiting. He stood up and helped her to her feet. But we have to move fast. That man in the mask isn't done yet. Vera looked at him. Her small voice was full of strength now. Then let's go back and save her. The wind howled above the trees. Jack and Vera climbed the hillside fast, soaked from rain and covered in mud. The hidden tunnel had brought them far, but not far enough. They were back near the place where her mother had stayed hidden. But this time they were not sneaking. They were going back to fight. Jack had made a promise. He would not leave without her mother. He checked the plasma cutter in his belt. Just one charge left. Useless in a long fight, but enough to slow someone down. Vera, though tired and dirty, looked more focused now. There was something different in her eyes. Less fear, more fire. They moved around to the far side of the broken hut, staying low. The door was closed now. Smoke still rose from inside. Jack whispered, "He's still there." Vera nodded. "I feel her. She's still alive." Jack peered through a crack in the wall. The masked man stood near the fire. His weapon rested by his side. He was speaking into a communicator. "No sign of the girl," he said. "But I still have the mother. She's weak. She won't last long." Jack's blood boiled. The mother was tied to a metal chair now. Her head drooped, but she was breathing. The man walked over and lifted her chin roughly. "You know she'll come back, that child of yours. When she does, I'll have both of you." Jack turned to Vera. "We do this smart, quiet." But she stepped forward. "No," she said. "He's hurting her. I can't wait." She walked out of the shadows straight into the open. Jack's heart stopped. "Vera, no." The masked man turned. For a moment he was silent. Then a slow, cold smile formed beneath his mask. "Well, there you are," he said. Vera stood still, not running. "I want my mama," she said. Jack stepped out, aiming his plasma cutter. "Let her go," the man laughed. "You brought her back. Good." He reached for his weapon. Jack fired. The last charge hit the weapon in the man's hand and exploded in sparks. The man screamed and dropped it. Jack ran forward, but the man was fast. He tackled Jack hard, sending him crashing into the wall. Vera screamed. Her mother lifted her head weakly. "Vera, run!" But the girl didn't move. She walked straight to her mother and placed her small hands on the ropes. A glow spread from her skin. The ropes melted. Her mother gasped. "How?" Vera smiled. "I learned." The masked man got up, fury in his eyes. "You little monster." He charged toward them, but Jack was faster this time. He grabbed a broken pipe and swung it hard. It hit the man's mask and cracked it. The man stumbled back, stunned. Jack dropped the pipe and stood between him and the women. "I won't let you touch them." The man pulled off the cracked mask. Jack froze. He was human. But his eyes were cold, empty, like he'd forgotten what mercy was. "These creatures," the man growled. "They're worth billions, and you're throwing it all away." "They're not creatures," Jack said. "They're a mother and child, and they've suffered enough." The man reached for a knife. But before he could move, Vera stepped forward. She held up her hand. The man laughed. "What's that gonna do, little—" He stopped. His chest began to glow. Blue light spread across his body. He dropped the knife, his face twisted in confusion and fear. "What? What are you doing?" Vera whispered. "I'm taking the poison out." The man fell to his knees. He began to shake. Sweat poured from his skin. Then he collapsed. Jack rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" Vera nodded slowly, breathing hard. He had something inside, something sick. I pulled it out. Jack looked at the man's body, still breathing but weak. "Let's get out of here." He helped the mother stand. She leaned on him, weak but smiling. "You saved her," she whispered. You brought her back to me. Vera held her hand. No more cages, she said softly. No more hiding. Jack smiled. Not while I'm here. The three of them stepped out into the rain. For the first time in days, the sky began to clear. But in the distance, lights blinked in the sky. Ships. More were coming. And Jack knew the fight wasn't over yet. The sky was burning red. Jack stood at the edge of the cliff watching as the ships approached from above. Sleek, black, and fast. They weren't rescue ships. They were hunters, just like the masked man. Beside him, Vera held her mother's hand. The alien woman, though still weak, stood taller now. Her eyes glowed brighter. She had strength again, not just from healing, but from hope. They're coming for us, Jack said, and they'll come hard. The mother nodded. They never give up once they mark someone. Vera looked up. But we're not alone anymore. Jack smiled, but it faded quickly. We have to run, I can cover you. No, the mother said firmly. You've done enough. We stand together now. The sound of engines filled the sky. One of the ships landed hard nearby. The trees shook. The back opened with a loud hiss. Soldiers in black armor stepped out. Not human, not alien. Something in between. Faces hidden, weapons ready. One of them shouted, "Surrender the asset, you have 10 seconds." Jack stepped forward. "She's not your asset." A blast hit the ground in front of him, sending dirt flying. The soldiers began to spread out. Jack turned to the mother. "Can you still heal?" She nodded. "Only a little. But there's something else." She looked at Vera. The girl stepped forward. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The ground beneath them trembled. Soft light began to rise from her body. Blue and warm. It spread like a wave through the trees. The soldiers stopped. They raised their weapons. But then something strange happened. The light touched them. One by one, they froze. Their weapons fell. Their bodies dropped to their knees. Jack's eyes widened. "She's stopping them," the mother whispered. "No, she's healing them." The lead soldier pulled off his helmet. Underneath was a face twisted in pain and sickness. But now that pain was gone. He looked at his hands, then at Vera. Tears fell down his face. "She saved me," he said in a shaky voice. "After all we did, she saved me." The others began to follow him, dropping weapons, kneeling, silent. Vera opened her eyes, glowing bright. She wobbled, weak. Jack rushed to catch her before she fell. The soldiers didn't move. They looked at her like she was something holy. The mother placed her hand on Jack's shoulder. "She's more than we ever knew." "But how?" Jack asked. "I think..." She reached their hearts. Suddenly, more ships appeared. But this time, they were human. Real human rescue ships. The distress signal Jack had sent earlier, someone had heard it. One ship landed gently beside them. The door opened and a woman in a clean white uniform stepped out. "Are you Jack Rayner?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes." She looked at Vera and her mother. These two were on the missing list. Galactic Healing Project. Long classified. We've been trying to find survivors. Jack stepped back. "So, you're not with them?" She shook her head. "We're here to help. Truly." Jack looked at Vera. She was awake again, tired but smiling. "Can we trust them?" he asked. The mother looked into the officer's eyes, then nodded. "Yes, I think this time we can." They boarded the rescue ship. As it rose into the sky, Jack looked down at the forest one last time. The cage, the monsters, the lies, all left behind. Vera sat beside him, resting her head on his arm. Her mother looked at them and smiled. "You gave her a future," she said. "And me. You gave me back my child." Jack smiled softly. No one should ever be left behind. The ship broke through the clouds. Stars stretched out in all directions, And for the first time since it all began, Vera closed her eyes without fear. She wasn't alone anymore. She had her mother, she had Jack, and now she had hope.